You know what's fascinating? We live in a world absolutely saturated with love stories. Every movie, every song, every Instagram post seems to revolve around finding the one. But there's a growing number of people who've just checked out of the whole thing. Not because they're bitter or broken, but because something deeper has shifted in how they view romantic relationships entirely. I'm talking about people who've genuinely given up on love. And before you jump to conclusions, this isn't about incels or toxic communities. This is about a psychological phenomenon that's far more nuanced than simple rejection or fear. Today, we're diving into the mental architecture of romantic resignation. Let's start with something your brain does constantly without you realizing it: cost-benefit analysis. Every single decision you make runs through this unconscious calculation. And when it comes to romantic relationships, your brain is tracking everything. Here's what most people don't understand about giving up on love. It's rarely an emotional breakdown. It's actually a cold, rational recalculation. These individuals have looked at the data from their own lives, the time invested, the emotional energy spent, the actual outcomes received, and their brain has reached a logical conclusion. The return on investment isn't there. Think about it like this. Imagine you tried starting a business 5 times, and each time it failed. You lost money, you lost time, you lost sleep. At some point, your brain isn't being pessimistic when it says, maybe entrepreneurship isn't for you. It's being efficient. That's exactly what's happening here, except the business is romantic connection. Research in behavioral economics shows that humans are loss-averse. We feel losses roughly twice as intensely as equivalent gains. So if someone has experienced multiple painful relationship endings, their brain isn't just remembering disappointment, it's experiencing each loss at double the psychological weight. Eventually, the mental math becomes overwhelming. But here's where it gets interesting. People who've given up on love don't just stop dating. They undergo a fundamental cognitive restructuring of how they view relationships entirely. Psychologist Roy Baumeister's work on willpower and self-control shows us something crucial. Giving up on a goal actually frees up massive amounts of cognitive resources. When you stop expending mental energy on finding love, pursuing relationships, and maintaining romantic hope, your brain suddenly has all this processing power available for other things. And that's what happens. These individuals often report experiencing a strange sense of clarity. They're not sitting around depressing themselves, they're redirecting. They're investing in friendships, careers, creative projects, personal development. They've essentially reassigned the psychological resources they were dedicating to romantic pursuit. The interesting part? Research from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology suggests that this kind of goal disengagement can actually improve well-being, but only when it's voluntary and comes with the adoption of alternative goals. When someone actively chooses to step away from romantic pursuit and genuinely invests elsewhere, they often report higher life satisfaction than people still stuck in the cycle of hope and disappointment. Now let's talk about attachment theory, because this is where the psychology gets really deep. John Bowlby's attachment framework shows us that our earliest relationships literally wire our brains for how we approach connection throughout life. People develop secure, anxious, or avoidant attachment styles based on childhood experiences. But here's what's crucial. These styles aren't fixed. What researchers like Philip Shaver have found is that repeated negative relationship experiences in adulthood can actually shift someone's attachment style. Someone who started life with relatively secure attachment can develop what's called earned avoidance through accumulated relational trauma. This isn't about one bad breakup. This is about pattern recognition. When your brain identifies a consistent pattern of relationships starting with hope and ending in pain, it does what brains do best. It adapts. It creates new neural pathways that associate romantic intimacy with danger rather than safety. The people who've given up on love often aren't avoiding connection because they don't want it. They're avoiding it because their attachment system has been recalibrated to view it as a threat to their psychological stability. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Giving up on love requires reconstructing your entire identity narrative. From the time we're children, we're fed a story about how life works. You grow up, you find someone, you build a life together. It's not just a preference, it's presented as a fundamental life milestone, like graduating or getting a job. Our entire cultural narrative is built around romantic partnership as a default setting. So when someone genuinely gives up on love, they're not just changing a goal, they're rewriting their entire life story. They're constructing an identity that doesn't include a central component that society tells them should be there. This requires serious psychological work. Research on narrative identity by Dan McAdams shows that humans understand their lives through stories we tell ourselves about who we are. Changing that story, especially changing it to exclude something as culturally significant as romantic love, demands cognitive restructuring at a fundamental level. But here's what's interesting. Many people who've done this work report feeling more authentic, not less. They've stopped performing a role they never fully believed in and started building an identity that actually fits their lived experience. Let's be real about something else. Giving up on love is also a defense mechanism. And that's not a bad thing. Defense mechanisms get a bad rap, but they're actually essential psychological tools. They protect us from experiences our psyche determines we can't handle. When someone's brain decides that continued pursuit of romantic love poses too great a threat to mental health and stability, giving up becomes an act of self-preservation. Psychologist Karen Horney wrote about what she called moving away from people as one of 3 primary interpersonal strategies. For some individuals, this becomes the dominant strategy not because they're damaged, but because it's genuinely the safest psychological position for them given their history and wiring. So what does all this mean? People who've given up on love aren't giving up on life. They're making a calculated psychological decision based on their lived experience, their attachment wiring, and their cognitive assessment of what serves their well-being. Some of them might re-engage with romance later, some never will. Both outcomes are valid. What matters is understanding that this isn't about deficiency or failure, it's about adaptation. Your brain's primary job isn't to make you happy, it's to keep you safe and functioning. And sometimes, giving up on love is exactly what that requires. If you found this analysis valuable, hit that subscribe button. Seriously, subscribing helps this channel reach more people who are looking for psychology content that goes beyond the surface level. We're building a community here that values depth over quick fixes, real understanding over feel-good platitudes. And if you haven't already, check out my latest video on the psychology of the pandemic generation. It's already up on the channel. We're exploring how global trauma during formative years has fundamentally rewired an entire cohort's mental architecture. We're talking about kids and teenagers who spent crucial developmental windows in isolation, how that's altered their social cognition, their risk assessment patterns, their entire relationship with uncertainty and safety. The psychological implications are staggering, and we're only just beginning to understand them. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Until then, keep questioning everything, keep digging deeper, and remember, understanding the psychology behind human behavior isn't about judgment, it's about clarity. I'll see you in the next one.